Hello and welcome to Just Onside. It's Monday, 7th of February. Just to let you know the date, it's been an okay sort of weekend, business as usual. The results went according to plan. So Arsenal won, Liverpool won, just. Leeds didn't play. Leeds playing tonight, so a little bit nervous.
Yeah, I can
But
hear a bit of trepidation in your voice, Ayub.
oh yeah, oh yeah. It's a massive, massive game today. But we'll talk about Leeds a little bit later on. You're giving me the opportunity to talk about Leeds, but that will be later on, just in case people want to switch off. They can switch off at the end rather than now. So, how are you? How was your weekend?
Lovely, actually. I went out for some lunch on Saturday, but again, quite relaxing. Watched the games. Arsenal were playing at lunchtime in the UK, so 4:30 our time. So yeah, very nervous game. And then yeah, Sunday was again full of football, some big games. But yeah, a very relaxing weekend. Thank you. How about yours?
Yeah, same. A little bit of family time. Watched football yesterday. And as I sort of mentioned, the results sort of went according to plan. I mean, Arsenal were expected to win, and they won. It was a bit of a battle, but in the end, quality told. Uh, Liverpool won, but as I said, it was sort of more sort of nerve-wracking than it should have been, but it ended up being 3 points, which is really what it's all about. And there was a game Tottenham versus Man United. It was almost a case of who the it's a battle of the two worst coaches, or at least coaches that are under fire. Uh, the Ange sort of came out on top, and that's really where I want to start. It was a decent, much needed win for Tottenham and for Ange, and for sort of bad to worse. We 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 sang his praises. We still think he's a good coach. At least I think he's still a good coach. But it's not really gone to plan. And the worst thing is, you're not really seeing anything which would give you hope if you're a Man United fan. So really, what I want to talk about today is Amorim. Uh, where are United at? And really, what what can Amorim do to risk this slide? I mean, you're talking about it's a 2, 3 year project. Is he going to be given that time? Because at the moment, the way it's looking, they seem to be no different. If anything, they're probably worse now than they were uh, under the Dutchman. So, what's your thoughts on sort of things at Man United?
Look, another difficult evening for them yesterday. It was a very watchable game for reasons that I think you kind of laid out there in terms of both teams struggling to some extent in positions that you would never believe in the Premier League in terms of starting the game. I think Manchester United started the game 14th. I think Spurs started 15th before the game had kicked off. And both teams would have had much higher, better aspirations for the season, wouldn't they, Ayub? So, given where they were, you're right. And it played out in that sense. I mean, look, Manchester United do have, similar to Spurs, they do have some very difficult injuries right now in terms of key personnel missing. Ayub. They also had a couple of players go down with illnesses. It's the last thing you need when you're A, struggling for form, B, got some key players out. And then obviously missing Diallo. I think news has come out that he may well be missing, I think, the rest of the season. I'm not so sure, but he's there. He's probably their best player, young player, but he's been their most impactful player anyway in terms of making decisive contributions. So heading into the game, you felt as though whichever team was going to lose the game was going to was going to bear the brunt, at least from a media perspective, in terms of backlash. You sensed perhaps that a defeat for Ange at home would have had greater ramifications simply off the back of, I believe, going out of two cup competitions, and then I mean, there's still some hope. I think in the Europa League or what have you, there's some idea that perhaps they could still go deep in that competition. Let's see. But I feel another home defeat. I think the fans would have made their feelings very clear. I think there was a huge protest just before the game against Daniel Levy and the owners there, or let's say the establishment that's running Spurs right now. So I think it would have had greater ramifications. It could have gotten ugly and could have gotten ugly fast, given that the game was at Spurs. But I think they probably just edged it. Manchester United had some big chances as well. and not least that Garnacho chance where it's unforgivable not to hit the target from where he was. But Spurs also had some great moments. So it was a case of both teams struggling a little bit. It was a you play, we play game for the most part in terms of being quite open. You never knew who was going to get the next goal, and in the end, one goal decided it. Just a large picture, you position the question about Amorim. Where do they go from here? I do think very quickly, Ayub, the the navigation of a manager at a big club, especially one that's struggling and failing to hit the heights of previous past triumphs, let's say, and accolades, is a very difficult one because there's an inbuilt expectation that ultimately this club belongs to the big time. We often speak about it with certain clubs that have had great moments in the past, and yet we still hold them to some extent to those same standards. I mean, even your club, Leeds, still gets talked about in the sense of,
Mm,
oh, they're a club that belongs in the Premier League. You speak about Newcastle, I mean, yes, they're now starting to punch near the top of the Premier League, but often many people speak about huge football club. Manchester United is as big as they come in this country, which means that there's an inbuilt expectation and in some ways, just some DNA to say United will get back to the big time. Will it take 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years? Now, it's been a difficult time since Sir Alex Ferguson left, best part of 12, 13 years and counting. And no manager seems to have quite gotten it right in terms of being able to challenge for Premier League trophies. I do think the navigation, Ayub, however, at a big club when there's a lot going on off the pitch, on the pitch, player personnel, etc., is probably one of the most difficult jobs because ultimately he's coming at a time when yes, he's got a blank slate, he's got 100% approval rate at the start with fans. I think fans liked the appointment, and they liked his age, they liked his profile, and what have you. And the fans were under the belief that with Ineos now making key footballing decisions, that slowly over time the good times would come back. Now, I want to still kind of be careful here, Ayub. I had written off this season. I'd written off pretty much next season. I did suggest, however, next year they'd want to start to see some shoots of progress in terms of a way of playing or what have you. But like I said, Amorim is about to face and is facing the challenges of what is still, I would argue, a kind of disproportionate amount of fan pressure and expectation to take United back to the big time. This kind of patience that's wearing thin because of the expectations. Similar, again, for example, Leeds United Football Club next year, if they are in the Premier League, you'll be happy with 17th in that first season.
mm,
Absolutely. It's just an expectation thing. With United, there's still an understanding and expectation that we should be there near the top four and then pushing for the Premier League title. That is the price you pay for being a Manchester United fan, manager, player, right? There is it's a heavy shirt to wear. I just worry for him that although I still believe without a shadow of a doubt that he is the right man, if not him, who else? I just think navigating those different expectations from fans, you've started to hear a few grumblings, Ayub, a few grumblings. It's very early on, but a few grumblings there are about tactics. Gary Neville's normally very careful about how he phrases and how he talks about Manchester United managers. He does not want to come across as being putting unnecessary pressure. But yesterday he spoke about how the tactics were naive and what have you. I just worry for him that given that there's issues off the field with Ineos making a lot of decisions about cost-cutting exercises, various different negative headlines that they're spearheading and that they are at the center of, then you have fans starting to think, well, what's this new manager actually bringing? Plus, you've got incredible amount of injuries, players missing, players leaving on loan, players who he's potentially falling out of. So there's a lot of things happening, Ayub. My biggest worry, I'll just give you the floor, is what I would have liked to have seen from Ruben Amorim is this kind of desire and commitment to fix the defense and say we're going to start keeping clean sheets and we're going to play to keep clean sheets. Now, there's one thing playing to keep clean sheets and there's another actually achieving it. Now, I don't think they've got the players and the personnel to do that anyway. But I do think it forges good habits if you start to think in that sense, like we will not concede today. Two banks of four, working hard, wingers doubling up for their fullbacks, helping out, and we'll use that as a springboard to create pressure and to create offensive situations. Right now, it's as though United still are like, no, we can go toe to toe, so we'll still play some football, and they've just not got the legs for it in some key key positions. So, I mean, yesterday, a central midfield, again, injuries, I understand, but a central midfield of Casemiro and Fernandez is just not going to cut it at this highest level in terms of legs, in terms of athleticism. So that would be my biggest fear for Amorim. I still believe he's the right man. I still believe he should be given time. I think he should be given this season and next season without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, for me, it's not even a question. The concern I have is he's dealing with a lot right now. There's a lot of what I would call there's not a lot of great talent still for me, in my opinion, at that football club. There's a lot that still needs to be moved out. You've got fans starting to think, what's this all about? We should start to see something. He's been there now for the best part of, I think, 21 odd games. We're not seeing anything to really get our teeth into, so to speak, in terms of style and what have you. And again, I still think it's quite early. So yeah, navigating all of that plus a lot of issues with ownership and structures and people losing their jobs and all the rest of it, it doesn't feel like a happy place to be Manchester United right now, players wise and staff wise. And I think for me, that's his biggest challenge. Navigating all of that whilst keeping most of the fans on side is probably his single biggest challenge. I think next season he needs to make it through to next season. I think he does. But then I think the patience will start to wear thin if they start to have this kind of season again, where it's just three defeats every 4 games type of thing.
Right. Well, uh, just going back to Amorim, I agree with you. I think he's the right appointment. Considering who's out there, I think in terms of who's out there, he comes with a good pedigree, at least good reputation. And you talked about his profile, his age. So there's various things that are going in United's favour. But my concern is at this moment in time that the age that we live in, time is not something that you're giving. Irrespective of which club you're at, there is a finite amount of time. Fans do want results, and you rightly talked about some of the grumblings already. My concern with Amorim is it's that he seems confused at the moment in terms of what his objectives are. Is it to get immediate results? Is it to look and identify who I want for next season? I think if I was Amorim or if I was an advisor, I think the first thing he should do is right. What's your agenda? What is the objective right now? As we speak now, is it to identify players for next season? Uh, if that's the case, then people will probably accept that there is going to be some results that won't go his way. But at the moment, it's unclear what his idea is. He seems to be trying to get results, uh, which which then, if that's the objective, then if you don't get the results, then you will get fans who are going to be slightly uh, uh, dissatisfied, which seems to be the case because there are a number of United fans I work with, I speak to, who are not happy with the way things are going at United. So I think that that's something that I would certainly, as a United fan, want to know from Amorim. Right, what at this moment in time, what's the objective? If it's results, he's certainly failing because uh, what we've what we've realised from managerial changes is that sometimes it can have an impact. David Moyes, he's transformed that football club. I mean, there's been no additions, but the club has been completely transformed. So he's brought an immediate change to the atmosphere that was at Everton Football Club. He's got the results. With Manchester United, you talked about it being a huge football club, and it is. There is no getting away from that. With a huge club, there are huge expectations. I think somewhere along the line, somebody at Manchester United needs to explain, in terms of the playing side of the business. I mean, in terms of what's happening outside or what's happening in a non-playing capacity, I think it's absolutely shameful. It's disgraceful what's happening. But that's nothing to do with Amorim. Amorim needs to control what he can control. That's the playing side. But he needs to come out and say, right, this is what I'm trying to do. Now, maybe I'm being naive. Maybe this is something that doesn't happen in the modern game. But at the moment, if I was a United fan, I have no idea what's happening. What's he trying to do? Is he trying to get a result? Is he trying to look for? Does he have a plan, or is he strategizing for next season? No idea at all.
Yeah, I mean, look, I agree with you to some extent. I guess my question to you is, if of course you and I know that if this form continues, he'll make it into next season. But if he started the first 15 games of next year in a similar type of form, let's say out of 15 games, they lose eight, draw two, and win five, or something along those lines in the first 15 games, do you think there will be kind of a lot of murmurings that Manchester United make a move or not? Now, right now, that seems unfathomable because I'd still like to think common sense prevails. Ownership should be giving managers when they bring them in on these circumstances. There's a reason why he's coming mid-season is because clearly it's not been going well. Now they're a further, I think, 10 points further adrift, if not more, I think, of top four than before when he came in. Now top
Mm,
four is not going to happen in a month of Sundays, but the point is that they've actually gotten worse since he's come in. Those are just the facts, just from a
mm.
points perspective, simply from a points perspective. Not saying that's the be all and end all for this year. Do you think that if he starts next season in a similar format and in a similar way, do you think then it won't just be grumblings that will be the calls will be quite deafening?
Absolutely, and I think rightly so, because I mean you are sort of talking about a longer term plan and strategy. Unfortunately, that's not going to be possible. It just doesn't happen that somebody is going to be afforded that amount of time. I still, for the life of me, can't understand what the reasoning was to bring him in now because there was too much to do, and I think really what they probably should have had is a director of football really involved in getting rid of players that are not necessary or not needed at Man United. Because at the moment it just seems it really is. I have no idea. I mean, I talked about it before in my opening sort of bit, but there's no idea as to what he's trying to do because this club needs to get rid of a lot of players. If that's the objective, then really just work on that. Bring in the kids. Don't play Casemiro. He's 63 years old. He shouldn't be playing. So I would just sort of say, if this season is a write-off, right, okay. If you've got an idea of who you want for next season, make sure that the only players that are playing now are those players. Now, obviously, if you've got so many injuries, then maybe your hands forced. But to me, Casemiro is not going to be playing next season. Bin him. Anybody else who's not going to be part of your plans next season, put them out to pasture. That's at least that I would understand. Even if it's a loss, I could sort of see, right, okay, that's what he's trying to do. At the moment, he's playing players that are not going to be part of his squad next season. Why?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're being ageist there, you, and that's a bit rich coming from yourself. But anyway, so we digress. We digress. Look, you make a good point. I think the fans would probably have more patience if you're going to be as ruthless as you were with Marcus Rashford, and Marcus Rashford will probably not play another football game for Manchester United Football Club, then you're right. You've got a clean slate. Just start playing some youngsters if needs be. Now, you might have been concerned that if I go down that route, relegation could be a challenge. It's not
No
now.
chance.
It's not
No
now.
chance. Yeah.
It's ultimately down to those bottom four clubs. But maybe he's just thinking that would have been just a cast iron guarantee that we'd lose more games than we should be. And look, they are losing a lot of games, so I'm not against that way of approaching things. Again, it's a quick way to get fans on side, isn't it? You've been in terms of playing some
Mm,
youngsters. You're seeing, although it's a better thriving environment, you're seeing what's happening at Arsenal with some teenagers
yeah.
making some key contributions. Although that's a much more healthier environment to come into, a much more confident environment to come into. I think what I would say for Amorim is he's not been dealt, in my opinion, a good hand from the extent of look, it's United, and with that comes great grace and opportunity, but it also comes with a great deal of pressure and headlines. He spoke about it very early on that he wasn't as used to, like constantly giving press conferences, and he yearned for the opportunity to have training sessions and all the rest of it, and invariably he'll want to have a full summer with the teams. Again, there's no European competition or international competition this summer, so he'd like to think he's going to get some of his players in and then start to work with them. But I am in agreement with you. I've not seen anything to date that would tell me, oh, he's going to be a success at Man United Football Club, and success will be challenging for the Premier League title. I've not seen that. However, I want to be fair to him. I didn't expect to see that. Did I expect them to have some sort of upturn? No. Ultimately, you are who you are, right? Ayub, they finished mid-table last year. They're probably going to finish mid-table of the bottom half this year. I mean, they might get a few wins and finish 11th or 12th, but let's see. But they are. I mean, it's embarrassing where they are in the league. no matter what, your Manchester United Football Club bringing in 77, 79,000 to every home game. And here you are in 15th position with a -7 goal difference. So it's embarrassing. There's no two ways about it. The worry for me, like I said, is I mean, I liked Dogu yesterday on the, I think it's Dogu, I think I pronounced his name correctly, on the left wing, let's say. He looked sprightly. I thought,
Hmm.
okay, promising debut, gets forward and what have you. I come back to the basics. They don't look like a team yet that's prioritizing clean sheets, an approach of the opposition today is going to create one or two chances max. Yet right now it looked like Spurs were going to create like 10 quality chances across the game, and that's not enough. It's not enough to give you a platform to build confidence to then go ahead and make big contributions in the final third offensively. You know this, so you use your defense to give you some sort of platform to play with, build a bit of confidence, and then you can play with a little bit of confidence and go forward and win some games, especially when you're struggling. I always think go back to basics. So right now, I think they're in a world of trouble. I think they are. I'm not even sure they've hit rock bottom yet. They've got a lot of issues off the field, Ineos, Glazers, a lot of fans being restless. You had the whole Dan Ashworth situation, embarrassing to say the least, placing him on gardening leave, paying good money, and then getting rid of him in a few months. I mean, this is a shambles, Ayub, whichever
Hmm.
way you look at it. No sign of it getting better. Still some grumblings about Ineos and what they've got plans for in terms of the team itself and the squad and the staff behind the scenes. Like I said, I don't think it's a healthy environment right now. And there's still a number of players to get rid of and a number of players to bring in. And I'll finish off with this, Ayub. A good manager is going to hit, let's say, a really good manager is going to hit 3 out of 4 signings. He'll get one wrong just by sheer law of averages. They're going to have to hit on many of these players that are coming in, and there's just no guarantee of Man United having a track record of doing that. So the fact that he's going to have to have such a high success rate in terms of hitting big on players that they're bringing in and them succeeding, especially in that United environment when there's so many more superior teams to them, not just from a technical perspective, but also from a aggression perspective in terms of just having been together and familiarity and pace and power and strength, all the things that you need just to compete in the Premier League. You have to think there's still a lot of tough days ahead of Manchester United Football Club that are a world away. For him to navigate through this and still be there at the back end to see this job through will really take some doing. And right now, I'm not convinced, even though I do still believe he's the right man, but I'm still not sure. And I'm not convinced that he will get that opportunity to see this through because right now, I mean, this is getting embarrassing now.
I've got nothing else to add. I think you've actually sort of summed it up really, really well. It's a club in big trouble, and Amorim's in real big trouble as well. As I said, I mean, you're sort of thinking that perhaps he will be given time. He will be given time in terms of next season, but I don't think he'll be given much more time than that if the results are not going his way. So Man United, a club in huge trouble. Uh, but clubs that are not in trouble, I mean, Liverpool and Arsenal had their two customary wins. I mean, probably struggled a little bit, both clubs. I watched the Arsenal game, and fair play to Leicester. They gave it a good go in terms of they stuck at it. They had some opportunities, but this is the difference. This is the difference. This is the reason why Arsenal are at the top and Leicester are at the bottom. It's you've got to take your opportunities. Leicester didn't. Arsenal did, and they've got a new guy now. You were complaining about strikers. You've obviously got this guy. You don't need strikers. So I bet you were delighted. Uh, my question is, rather than just the sort of comments about the game, but Liverpool won, Arsenal won. Do you just think it's too much ground that Arsenal will need to make up? And do you, I've got to sort of say Liverpool wobbled. It sort of felt like there were some tired legs there as well. So it probably isn't a foregone conclusion, but do you think the gap is just too big for Arsenal to overcome?
I don't necessarily see it as the gap being the key fundamental reason why Arsenal will not recover this gap. It's also because I think Liverpool are that good. It's just simply that. I mean, think about it. If Arsenal had all of their guns and they're far from it right now, you'd still say 7 points is a significant hole to overcome, a significant gap to overcome. But you'd think, well, we've got our best players available and playing, and we'll give it a right go. The challenge you have is that they've got, and you kind of teased me a little bit in the last podcast, but they're missing literally their first choice strike force. I mean, Saka, Martinelli, and Havertz is their first choice strike force, and they're missing them at least for the next 4 games, two of them at least, in terms of Saka and Martinelli. And Saka's obviously missed a big amount of time. And it's to Arsenal's credit ultimately that they are on a 15 game unbeaten run in the Premier League, 10 wins and 5 draws. And that is for me, and I always will back him up when I believe he deserves it. It's testament to the manager. It's testament to an elite level coach. I know right now there's a lot of grumblings about him in the media, but that's just the way the media works right now about how if he doesn't win a trophy, do we have to ask questions? And even Ayub sometimes flirts with
Mm.
that line of questioning, let's say, which I find preposterous. But yeah, ultimately, he deserves an immense amount of credit because he's without his gun play, he's missed Odegaard for a period of time, lots of injuries left, right, and centre. And yet, they're still finding some way to scrap and compete. And there's something to be said about that, Ayub. There is something to be said about competing and not giving in. And I told you his words before the game were, nobody feels sorry for us. We go. It's a challenge to the football club. It's a challenge to the squad, and we'll play. Nothing about how or well it's not meant to be. So yeah, look. First and foremost, I don't think it's a case of about the gap being too big. I think you have to give our, Liverpool an immense amount of credit. They've been the best team in the league so far by all metrics. They deserve to be where they are. They deserve to be in pole position to win the Premier League, and I think they will do that at a canter. I often find it interesting when people observe that it is a title race because for me, the reason why it isn't is very simple. Because A, the gap's too big, so you can't really consider it a Premier League title race just because one team's first and one team's second. That it's a Premier League title race. I don't think it is just yet. I also think Arsenal, just by the law of probability and averages, are going to drop some points somewhere soon because you can't go on a 15 game unbeaten run, which, by the way, is their best record since I think Wenger in 2014 or God knows how long ago it was. So this is their best run so far in terms of unbeaten run, and yet still be without key gun players across the board and think, yeah, they'll keep winning. Somewhere down the road, similar to maybe Saturday lunchtime at you, it felt like the game was going to peter out. Now, one small thing I just want to say about the game, if I may, you very quickly, is there's a lot of talk. Even I, before the game, was thinking that he should probably opt for Mikel Merino up front. Very similar physical characteristics to Havertz. And also, I was thinking that you need to have one offensive player off the bench to come on to in terms of making that contribution. Now, there's a lot of talk after the game, Ayub, about how, oh, they found their number 9. Now, I want to preface my comments. I think he's going to have to go down with this ship in terms of playing Marino now up front for us foreseeable, just because he's got no other options, especially given the predicament he finds himself in the league. But I actually think I've watched Marino closely this season. He's had to work himself up to full fitness and full sharpness. Now, I don't know if you agree, Ayub. The easy thing to say is, oh, you play him from the front and you'll probably get more opportunities. And some of his movement was really cute and what have you. My concern is I've seen him in games where he has flagged a little bit as the game has gone on, and he's always struggled to finish a full 90 looking fresh and sharp. I wonder because of his, I won't call it lack of conditioning, but just in terms of his lack of out and out sharpness, it's very different that you starting a game when all the players in the game are fresh and space is a lot more at a premium in terms of finding those cute little gaps and all the rest of it. It's normally in that last 15, 20 of you when teams start to rest a little bit, especially some of the inferior teams, they start to go a bit deeper, they start to go into their low blocks, and your freshness can often make the difference. Just that little bit of so I think that would be my concern in terms of the idea that, oh, you start him, you'll get more out of him in that sense. I'm not sure it's going to work that way. The first 70 minutes, most of the players on the pitch are at their peak fitness, so to speak, and peak conditioning. I'm not sure if he's going to be as sharp, especially then if it comes to that last 20 minutes when he's played the full game, let's say, and still be sharp enough to find that spot that he did between centre back and full back and be as sprightly as he was for the second goal, just hovering at the back post and then finishing it off so nicely. So I think that's one little caveat I would put to Arsenal fans thinking, there you go, just plug him up front. Again, I think he's going to have to because it's the lesser of two evils. He really doesn't have any options. And if you watch Sterling play, I mean, it's not really a viable option for him right now. So great win for Arsenal, great win for them as a football club, great win for Arteta, if you ask me. Nwaneri, in my humble opinions, if his mentality is right, he's going to go right to the very top. No two words about it. Genuinely top quality footballer. Ball sticks to his foot. Again, all about the mentality for me from now on in and just his physical kind of capabilities. But he will be going, I believe, right to the very top. But Liverpool, I don't know what your thoughts are. I mean, I don't think there's too much to critique in terms of doing a post-mortem. Wolves are very good in that second half, let's be very clear, and could
Mm,
easily have got a point, and they will take a lot of confidence in their relegation battle, you. But I think from a Liverpool perspective, they did get a bit lazy, I thought, in the second half. Slot spoke about a little bit of fatigue setting in. They've got some big games coming up. Aston Villa, Man City, Newcastle, I think all on the bounce in the league, Ayub. But I think perhaps too much is being made of it as well. I mean, these are games that you always get at various points in the season, don't you? Where you're not playing your best. Wolves more than deserve to get back into the game, and then were really threatening. They were really knocking on the door, and they were much the better team actually in the second half. It wasn't even really
mm,
close. Yes, Liverpool had some moments. You got the disallowed goal, the penalty that was rightly reversed. But Wolves were much the better. I don't think many would have been too surprised if Wolves had got an equaliser. If you just watched that second half, they were much more
mm.
sprightly, much more kind of on the front foot. But Liverpool did what you do, which is you dig in, you get the points, and you go on. Do I think this is a sign of things to come? Absolutely not. You just get games like this where you've not quite got it. And I think they more than deserved. I say deserved. They deserved it because they scored more goals than the opposition, and that's ultimately what it's about. So I think it's just one of those weeks. Arsenal did what they had to do in terms of picking up an away win, and away wins are away wins, and you always celebrate those. But Liverpool will just go marching on. And I think if you look at the standard that they've set Ayub this year, I think they're more than deserving of top spot currently. And Arsenal are scratching and clawing just to really stay within touching distance, like I mentioned, 15 games unbeaten. So time will tell. I think Liverpool will run away with this in the end, simply because they've A, got all their best players available, and B, Arsenal do have some injuries still to attend to. So we'll see. But both clubs did what they had to do this weekend.
Yeah, but just on the point of Liverpool, I mean, you talked about that this is not really something that should be of concern. But I just sort of think that there's been a lot of intensity. I mean, Liverpool are obviously in sort of multiple competitions. They've played with a great deal of intensity. And they obviously have some very, very key important players who've played a huge amount of games. Now, I don't have the data, I don't have the stats, so I'm not sure whether their sort of players have played more minutes than other teams. Obviously, with the Arsenal, you've had injuries, so you've had to bring other players in. So, uh, and Odegaard has he had injury, so he's come back. Now, obviously, it's always difficult coming back, but there's also a certain freshness as well. But it looked certainly from the feedback that I got from Liverpool fans, they were concerned that players look leggy. There's some big games coming up, and they're playing Man City in I think next week or the week after, and Man City are maybe turned a corner. I mean, that was a massive, massive result for Man City. They've got some new additions, and really, I mean, I talked about Guardiola. That's the way he coaches. If it's not working, buy some players. But he has an impact because if he buys good players, that's where he revels in coaching because he has systems that really you need top quality players to make that system work, and they were fantastic against a Newcastle side that is it's no mean feat now, winning comfortably against Newcastle. So that's going to be a challenge. I think Liverpool players are just feeling it a little bit. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion because I think I was impressed with Arsenal for the fact that they kept going. Their key players sort of stood up. Certainly Odegaard. I was keeping an eye on Odegaard.
Second
He
half,
was
yeah.
magnificent. I think he was magnificent. I think he's one of those players that, yes, he'll do some things which are outstanding, but he'll also do some of the simple things. His positioning, some little through balls, very cute. It probably in a game you might not even pay attention to that, but when I was really keeping an eye, I thought he was absolutely magnificent. He really is. He's a sort of player that he shows always. He's a leader. You've got a number of leaders, and just to talk about sort of slightly United as well. This is where they're lacking as well. There's no leaders. There's no player. I mean, we talk about Odegaard. Maybe the equivalent for United would be Fernandes, but they're chalk and cheese. They're absolutely chalk and cheese. So I was very impressed with the fact that they kept on going. They forced something to happen in the end, and they look pretty fresh. in contrast to Liverpool, who I thought just looked a little bit mentally tired as well. And I think this is the thing, you see, it's all well and good so physically tired, but I think mentally it's been quite a challenge because there is something about being the front runner. There's certain pressures and expectations. Now they can see the finishing line. Maybe that's when it perhaps starts affecting some players. And it just looked like that. It just looked as if maybe just now they're feeling it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a fair call out. If I was a Liverpool fan, I would have been quite frustrated when that second half was going on because Wolves were very much in the ascendancy, but Liverpool still stuck to the way they played, which was like you got more Salah cheating on that other side. So they are always a little bit off balance, let's say. That's the way they play. That's the way they've managed to get the best out of Mo Salah this season as well. Um, but as Wolves were in the ascendancy in the second half, Liverpool didn't really do anything to diffuse that in terms
Mm,
of offsetting some of the pressure that Wolves were setting up. And me as a football fan, I'm always thinking when you're 2-0 up, I'm not saying you should retreat into two banks of four, but if you go into two banks of four against a team that's fighting for to survive in the Premier League, I promise you, they will not score two goals. It's not going to
mm,
happen. If you're at home, you're winning 2-0, you'll actually get more goals on the counter because those type of teams are not well equipped at you to break down two banks of four. They just don't have it. They don't have that talent, the patterns of play to break down those kind of walls. The only way they can beat you is through athleticism, through running, and through running between the thirds. I mean, you saw some situations, so that great save from Alisson. Great ball from the defender through the middle. Great flick, and the guy was through, wasn't he? My point is, Liverpool didn't really. That was a little bit of a sign for me that for whatever reason they didn't quite arrest or recognize the situation for what it was, which was Wolves are in the ascendancy. Let's just get everyone back and just two banks of four, and we'll see this out with a clean sheet. So that would have worried me if I was a Liverpool fan. But I just really don't see it. You get games like this where you don't quite look at your best. And look, the thing about the fitness thing in terms of being in major competitions, that works both ways, are you? So what I mean is, if you're playing the same 11 or relying on the same 11 throughout the first half of the season, the first two-thirds of the season, the same 11 or 12, 13, 14 players that you're utilizing and not saying running into the ground, but those same players are the ones that's forging this type of lead in the Premier League. So in a sense, you're spending early, aren't you, Ayub?
mm.
With the hope that actually at the back end the gap will be enough to maintain. So it's a trade-off, is what I'm saying. That
Yeah,
you
yeah,
now
yeah.
think about how Pep has approached the Premier Leagues previously. You've seen this in many times where he's kept Foden, let's say, on the bench for the first
Mm,
12, 13, 14 games of the season. And then come the last 10, 12 games, Foden's
mm.
playing all the Champions League games, all the Premier League games. And we often speak about he looks fresh. And he's done this
Yeah.
with Grealish, he's done this with Foden. And it's worked a great deal of success where he's done this knowing we've got 50, 60 games to play this season. And a lot of these players are playing internationals as well. Again, slots not being one for rotating, which is, to be fair, the way you want it to some extent. You want to play your best players at all times because that's what's forged them to be top of the Champions League group, to be top of the Premier League, to be the best team in the league, arguably the best team in Europe. If they start to feel that a little bit, which I don't think is the case, I just think that's a trade-off that a manager and a club makes, which is, we spent early to try and get ahead a little bit, and now perhaps we're paying the price. I don't think it's come to that. I think Villa, City, and Newcastle, especially after the City result, you'd be absolutely right. Although City have a tough away game at Madrid in midweek, I think that probably helps Liverpool to some extent. Although Liverpool have got to play
Mm.
Villa, what I mean is, if Liverpool were playing Villa and City had a blank week in midweek, then you'd think City will be really fresh and firing. Let's say at the in at the weekend. So yeah, tough. But I think on the whole, Liverpool more than happy to be where they were. Cool. Are you just switching topics now a little bit? We did say, or you did say at the early part that we were going to discuss a little bit of Leeds. Big game tonight. No doubt you're a bit nervous, but I want to touch a little bit about, if it's okay for you, just on a couple of things. One, a lot of the people, when I speak to them about what your Leeds fandom means, what in terms of your support for Leeds, they never quite grasp the fact that I've never met anyone who's as serious about their football club in terms of what Leeds means to you. And I always try and explain to them, well, you don't know like what Ayub's like in terms of the way how nervous he gets, how sometimes quite upset he gets, quite fanatical about his support for Leeds. I want to take it, if it's okay for you, right from the very beginning. When did you start supporting Leeds? And then just Tell us a little bit about what Leeds actually does mean to you, because I've always wanted to. I mean, I've heard it from you firsthand, but I think our viewers would like to understand: A, where did the love affair, if you can call it that, begin? And secondly, what is a typical Leeds game like? Because I know you don't like sometimes watching the games, you're nervous. Talk us through some of that kind of.
Right, in terms of where it comes from, uh, it's sort of older brother was a sort of Leeds supporter. Again, because he grew up in the 70s, and that's when Leeds were a massive, massive club. Plus, we've got lots of family in Yorkshire as well, so there's a connection. Albeit most of the family in Yorkshire support Man United, but there is a connection. So it's usually it's like with most things, it's passed down. But by the time I really, really sort of got into Leeds, the they'd hit the peak and they were going down. So by the time I really got into Leeds, probably sort of late 70s, early 80s, they were a shadow of the former self. But I was hooked. I was hooked. And I can recall, even at the very young age, being very, very passionate. Now, obviously, in the 80s, it wasn't wall-to-wall football. So in a sense, there was no Twitter, there was no social media, there was no internet. So the intensity of the support was just basically it's what sort of looking for the result. But I was always passionate. I try and think why. It probably is about escapism. I think even from a young age, it's escapism. So maybe I suppose the escapism as a child is different to the escapism now. It's probably more intense now than it probably was when I was a child. Uh, but Leeds is it's an addiction. It really is. It's a strange phenomena. I mean, as you know, sometimes I can't watch the game, uh, and it because I've invested so much in Leeds, and in a sense now, I mean, I think for me, it is the when Leeds are playing, I genuinely forget about everything else. That's how much investment I've made in Leeds, and uh, all the problems that may be happening in the world, all the issues that are happening in the world, they are forgotten. Genuinely, they are forgotten, and maybe because of the investment that I've made, it's just too much. I There's too much at stake, which is the reason why I can't watch it. It's a bizarre one. It's one even I find it difficult to explain, but it it really is. It's a strange phenomena that I have supporting Leeds United Football Club. It really is. It's with a passion. There is nothing else that I invest as much passion in than Leeds United Football Club. Uh, and that's the reason why I find it even sort of difficult to sometimes watch them. I'll watch them if they're 3-0 up and there's 5 minutes to go. I think that's when I can watch. But primarily, I think if I was to do, I mean, if there was a psychoanalyst, he probably would sort of say, right, it's escapism. It's trying to get away from, I suppose, sometimes the harshness of modern day living. And that's probably what it is. As I said, I've always been passionate, even when I was younger. Maybe it was a different sort of escapism, but now it's primarily it's something where genuinely, when that game starts, nothing else matters. Uh, I won't be able to watch it because, especially now, because I think the stakes are so high. I mean, today's game. I'll briefly just talk about today's game and talk about other things again.
Um,
But today's game is it. The next two games will define our destiny. Sunderland today, and the next game is Sheffield United. If we win today, that in a sense sort of puts Sunderland out of the equation in terms of automatic.
mm,
So that means that's one team we've knocked away. It'll also mean we will be 7 points ahead of Burnley, who are third. That's a three-game swing.
it's eight, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean with the goal advantage, it's virtually 8 points, but that's a three-game swing. There's a handful of games left. Uh, I can't see us potentially losing sort of three games. So that's how important this game is. So I am nervous. I mean, we had a decent weekend. Burnley drew, albeit they were away at Preston. So it's a feisty derby. A little bit of nonsense. There was a bit of racism from Osmacic, I think it is, on Hannibal, which is
Yeah.
yet to. I'm not sure what the outcome of that is, but it was quite a spicy affair. But it was a game that I expected Burnley to win 1-0. But they didn't. They as usual, didn't concede, but thankfully they didn't score. Sheffield United was the one that I knew that they were going to come out with the result. Luton actually were much the better side. The fact that they come out with a draw is harsh. The fact they lost, but that's reason why they're at the bottom of the table. But Sheffield United won. But really, in a sense, perhaps it was more important that Burnley didn't win. So there's an opportunity. But again, now, has Fark and the players got what it takes? So that's what I'm expecting now from Fark. Has he got what it takes to make it count, to capitalize?
You're the best team in the championship by a mile. I still can't believe you're questioning this manager. I want to touch a little bit about kind of game day for you. There was a situation, if you remember, there was a game about 3 or 4 years ago when you were in the Premier League. You'll remember this. It was a Sunday evening, a game at Spurs, and you actually called me to your house, if you remember, for a cup of tea and a few wonderful delicacies put on by the old lady. And I was really shocked that you'd invited me. Firstly, you don't invite anyone, but
Yeah,
secondly, I knew it was Spurs against Leeds that day, and I believe the game was at the new Spurs stadium. I think it was open by then. And I remember asking you twice. I was like, "Hang on, isn't that when Spurs are actually playing Leeds?" Because I know you like to be left well enough alone. So it was very nice of you to invite me over, and the samosas were lovely as well, might I add. But it was a lovely game. I still remember it. Dan James, I think, scored early doors. You were winning 1-0. I think you lost 2-1 in the end. But you watched the game with me, which I thought was a very big surprise for me anyway. Like I said, A, you don't like watching games, and B, I know you like to be left well enough alone. But what is that 90, 95, 97 minutes like for you? I know it's a little bit torturous. You're very nervous. Like I said, you don't really like watching it. You like following it on Twitter. But what's it like in terms of getting all the different updates? And it must be, I mean, you must go through the ringer, really.
absolutely. I mean, I mean, that was an exception. And maybe anybody else that I wouldn't have done that because you're absolutely right. It's something where if it's to do with escapism, you want to completely sort of escape uh, everything that obviously you're trying to sort of move away from. So I like to watch it on my own because I don't like distractions. I don't like people sort of talking. As I said, I invest so much emotion. Really, that's what it is. So the it's like today. I mean, I'll give you an example. I mean, what I'll do is uh, all social media. So I'll switch off all notifications. What I don't want is any communication. So I don't want somebody sending a WhatsApp message, a text message. So in a sense, I'm shutting myself off from the world. So once the game starts, I am following it solely on Twitter, and we've got some really excellent Yorkshire Evening Post reporters who sort of. I mean, it's a bizarre thing because in a sense you are actually sort of in the game. In one sense, it you almost feel more part of the game because in a sense it's like you're following it on Twitter. It's a really good reporter. He'll give you updates every few minutes. There's an update. If there's a near miss, he'll put it down. The feeling of when there is a goal scored. Now, obviously, if you're watching it, it's in real time. You're seeing it. You're sort of living it on Twitter. I mean, I've sort of given you an example of how he does it. I mean, he just puts in bold capital letters, goal. So when you're scrolling, obviously, it's like you can see the L's, the big capital L's and the O's. It is just, it's a feeling that I can't describe. It's a feeling of euphoria, which is unexplainable, but it really is. It's just uh there used to be a journalist called Phil Hay who started that trend. Now I'm sure other journalists probably do that as well, but it was Phil Hay who's part of the Athletic now who used to do that, and it is just the most amazing sensation, amazing feeling. And as I said, I am shut off from the world. I will be away. I'll sort of probably be in the bedroom, and it's just but the intensity, the emotion is just heightened.
Mm,
Genuinely, it's like my breathing is heavier. Uh, it's especially if it's sort of where we're winning by the odd goal. The last few minutes, I'm constantly refreshing, and I can hear my own heartbeat. It's
yeah.
that intense. Uh, so it's em emotion. I'm an emotional mess if it's a close game. Today, the build up, I'll be really tense. Once the game starts, I genuinely I can feel my sort of breathing sort of being quite sort of heavy. So it's a I feel after the game as
I
if
was
I
gonna
played
say,
the
I
game.
was gonna say
Yeah.
that's because that's because you're out of shape. Go on, carry on.
It doesn't help. It doesn't help at all. But in a sense, that's what makes it uh the experience because of I'm so involved, so engaged in the game. It makes the euphoria that much more intense, that much more pleasurable, and but conversely, the pain is that much more acute if it doesn't go your way. Which today, obviously, because of the stakes are so high, but this is really what in a sense this is what it's all about. The game for me, it's what it's all about. I mean, I'm a man of extremes, and this is something, as I said, I take it to the extreme. It's my one escapism, nothing else. I mean, there is no other element to my life where I'm as engaged as I am supporting Leeds United. And in a sense, Leeds United almost typify sort of the life that I've led. It's there's chaos, there's occasional moments of success, there's deep disappointment. So in a sense,
Wow,
it's a wonder.
your
Yeah.
your sons are really gonna be happy with that comment.
But it is, it encapsulates, and in a sense it was almost it's a marriage that is uh it's turbulent, it's full of criticism, bitterness, but ultimately those moments of joy, it's like during the promotion. I still remember him, and it was almost. I mean, I was on my own. I mean, it was COVID time, so therefore, a lot of people were on their own. But it was just I genuinely it was when we secured promotion, and it was actually sort of via Huddersfield, sort of winning a game. So, but it was I genuinely. I mean, there was no tears, but it wasn't far off. I genuinely felt that emotional because especially that was 16, 17 years in the making. We've been out of the top flight for such a long time, and it was just wonderful. It was a feeling that I cannot describe. I mean, I feel I'm reasonably articulate, but it's one that I can't describe. It's one of those where you have to experience it. You can't describe it. You've got to experience it. It is it's the love of my life in a sense, Leeds United Football Club, for all the the agony that supporting this club has brought. Those rare moments, and they have been quite rare. Those rare moments of joy are just something that I cannot. I don't think I can ever explain the sheer unadulterated pure joy that I have felt in those moments. So Leeds, it's as I said, if for somebody that doesn't watch them, the intense sort of passion with which I follow this team, because people turn around and say, "Well, you hardly go to Ellen Road." I go to Ellen Road. It's a strange one. When I go to Ellen Road, it's I'm still involved. I'm still passionate, but it's a strange one there because I can watch that. That's a strange feeling
Yeah.
when I'm actually physically there. But watching it on telly is completely. It's just not possible.
Yeah, and I think watching games live, especially when it's your football club, there is, I don't know what you think, but there's still a sense of nerves because ultimately you want your team to do well, and there is the whole unknown, right? But
Mm.
you're also aware that you're at a football ground, which still feels quite a unique experience. You're surrounded by others, so you're more, let's say, guarded about perhaps how you behave, how you act. Or at least I do. I can't speak for you, I can imagine. But it's just more, you're going to be a little bit more, let's say, environment kind of be conscious, let's say, of your environment, right? You are right. There's something quite when you're on your own, you're kind of left with your own thoughts, your own devices. There's nobody watching you. There's no one there to observe you. There's no one there to comfort you. There's no one there to be conscious of. Like, imagine watching a game of football and you're sat there with a relative or something like that. You're going to be somewhat guarded. You're not going to say certain words, be it profanity or whatever it may be. When you're on your own, you're absolutely right. I mean, I prefer to watch my games, watch games of Arsenal on my own as well. If it's an England game or what have you. I don't mind watching it together and all the rest of it. But Arsenal feels quite unique. Same for you for Leeds as well. And I'm like you in the sense of like a good result will make your day. A great result. There's a euphoria and all the rest of it. I remember how I felt when earlier this season at Fulham when Saka's goal was disallowed in that 89th minute just for a half a yard offside. The feeling of that kind of not just disappointment, but it really affects you in some ways. I've got two die-hard Liverpool supporting brothers who very much, if the results don't go their way over the weekend, it really affects them. One perhaps a bit more than the others. But often my sister-in-laws will ask me, "Oh, how did Liverpool get on this weekend?" Knowing full well that if the answer's well, it's not gone so well, they know let's just say, things might be tough for a day or two. So, no, look, I'm with you, and I think that's the great thing about sports, football being our national sport in the UK as well. There's just an affiliation. Obviously, you're always going to resonate with football more than other sports, at least in terms of that kind of visceral support that you often feel for your club, the yours. And there's something quite intimate in a sense about all of us. When you watch that game, we're all fans, we're all armchair managers, and we all think we should be doing this and should be doing that, and we need to see more of this and this. We're all trying to find solutions, aren't we? We're all armchair managers. So I think there is, in some ways, the escapism that you speak of. I just want to let you have the final word on this. Escapism is the right word, isn't it? You The weeks are hard. I mean, these are first world problems. Let's be very clear.
Mm,
Um, but you work a week, you work for the week, whether it's easy, difficult, challenging, various different circumstances come up in your professional setting, in personal settings, whatever they may be. Everyone's going through something or the other, good, bad, or indifferent. And sometimes football at the end of the weekend is just that your time. It's your time. It's your intimate time. You said it's the quote unquote love of your life. Well, it's your kind of intimate moment, let's say, with your football club to just for those few hours, like I said, if it's good, bad, or indifferent, it's one of those till death us do part type
mm.
situations. And I know what you're like. If come 10 p.m. today Leeds have won, your mind will start thinking about, oh, it looks like we might well be going up. We're nearly there. We're within touching distance. We've put a distance between us and fourth. You will start to have those hopes and those moments about next year in the Premier League. If it doesn't go so well, I also know what you'll be feeling. I mean, you'll still be
Yeah.
top of the table, which will be what some comfort.
No, second. We're second. If
Yeah,
we draw, yeah, if we draw, we'll be top of the table. Yeah.
fair enough, but you get the point. So look,
Mm.
I'm with you. I know how it can swing. It's the hope that kills you. We often speak about. So yeah, look. Final word Leeds today. What do you reckon? I mean, after all of that, let's hope they win. Everyone's hoping they win after you
Well,
talk.
it's. I mean, it's a must not lose. Uh, Obviously, I'll be delighted with a win, but as long as we don't lose, because it means that Sunderland haven't made any ground. We'll be top of the league again. Burnley drew, so in a sense, it's sort of as you were. So it's a must not lose. But I don't want Fark to go in with that attitude where right, we're going to try and not lose the game. We're top of the league, or at least we're at the top two because we're at our best when we play on the front foot. Uh, but ultimately, it's about the result. It's not about the performance. It's about the result. As long as we don't get beat, I'll be okay. If we win, I'll be absolutely over the moon. But it's gonna be hell of a sort of 2 hours or so. I'm sort of getting really nervous. I'm gonna go for a walk just to clear my mind before undoubtedly quite a tortuous sort of couple of hours. I mean, because it's not going to be it's not. I mean, we've had some comfortable victories. We've had a 7-0 against Cardiff, a 4-0 against Watford. We've had two sort of thumping victories. I don't think this is quite going to be a thumping victory. In fact, I mean, as I said, I'd be delighted with a 1-0 victory. But it's going to be it's what it's all about. Simple. It's what it's all about. In a sense, these are the moments that, for all the sort of anguish, but that's the thing you see when it's like to have the moments of euphoria, you need the opposite as well to really appreciate those moments of euphoria. And it is, and I'm so glad in one sense that I support Leeds, because if I supported Manchester United or Liverpool, in a sense, there would have been a lot of other people. This is for me, it's perfect. I won't sort of say I'm a lone wolf, but this sort of sits with me very well. That I support a club that very few people, if any, in sort of Blackburn support. So therefore, I'm quite unique.
There's a
So
reason
this
for that.
experience, yeah, yeah, yeah. So it is something that I am sort of have to myself,
Yeah.
and it sort of it for me it fits sort of perfectly that Leeds is mine. Nobody else really supports Leeds here. So therefore, this is something that I have, which is quite unique. So therefore, when I have those moments of absolute joy, it's only me who's obviously experiencing those moments of joy here in this area. So I quite sort of like that feeling as well. So I'm delighted. I'm glad that I support a club that nobody else does. But there is also, if there's pain, I'm gonna have to go through the pain on my own, which is the hard part. So
And there's a lot of that to go around as well. So yeah,
right. So fantastic. Yeah, yeah. Nice little indulgence on my love of Leeds United. So hopefully the next time that we hook up towards the end of the week, I'll be in a really, really good mood because of the fact
hopefully,
that we've had a decent result.
fingers
Right.
crossed.
Right. So on that note, hopefully, I'm going to go out for a little walk, get my mind right for this massive, huge game this evening. So hope you've enjoyed the show. Look after yourself. Take care. And we'll see you very soon. See you now.